Shocking news, Joe Biden is taking big action to address the rising cost of living. The administration has just made huge changes to their economic agenda. Gas relief rebate cards will begin going out starting this week, and so more gas relief could be on the way for cash-strapped Americans as the government continues to tap into oil from its stockpile. Today, the Biden administration announced it would release even more oil from the Strategic Oil Reserve and work to replenish that supply. The White House would do so by establishing a federal guarantee to buy oil from some drillers at preset prices to help restock the supply. It seems to be an effort to encourage more domestic drilling during a stretch of high gas prices. Now, the Energy Department will soon put forward a rule helping them do that. According to a new release from the White House, over 125 million barrels of oil have already been sold since the government first began its unprecedented release in March, and the reserve is set to release about 180 million barrels by the fall. A report by the Treasury estimates that releasing crude oil from the reserves has brought the price of gas down by about 17 to 42 cents a gallon from where it would be without the federal action. Gas prices began spiking in late February and early March. In the months that followed, the White House sparred with the oil industry, pressing executives at companies like ExxonMobil and Chevron to ramp up production, while also highlighting outsized profits for the oil and gas industry following the price increases. Some sort of relief at the gas pump remains possible in New York. One plan would even have New York gas rebate checks sent to every vehicle owner in the state. The Democratic senator who represents part of Rockland and Westchester proposed that $250 gas rebate check legislation. The lawmaker said in an official statement, with gas price hitting record highs every week, it's crucial that New York State takes whatever action is possible to help people who are getting squeezed at the pump. While the state cannot control the international factors that are contributing to rising oil prices, there are steps we can take to provide some relief. He also wants to suspend the state's gas sales tax. The New York State Senate has included the suspension of the gas tax from May to December in its budget proposal. The U.S. energy industry, meanwhile, asked for more support for domestic oil producers, and some in the industry expressed skepticism over ramping up production when Democrats are pushing for a transition away from oil and gas towards renewable energy. The plan to restock the strategic reserve at set prices is intended to sway producers to ramp up drilling, incentivizing investments that might produce oil in the medium term, and looking into guaranteed demand. In the meantime, Americans' wallets are getting squeezed by soaring gas prices. In June, inflation reached a 41-year high. Skyrocketing gas prices fueled nearly half the increase in inflation.
American jobs, raise American wages, and most importantly, save American lives. Today, I want to talk about how the Inflation Reduction Act would tackle two of the major costs that fossil fuels inflict on American families and on the federal budget. First, the cost of public health, and second, the cost of natural disasters. So let me start with the public health costs. Burning fossil fuels pollutes our air, with low-income communities and communities of color being hit the hardest. And one of the biggest causes of emissions from diesel is from diesel vehicles like buses and trains. Mr. Florida, you are an expert on climate and environmental issues, so let me ask you, if these vehicles, buses and trains, ran on electricity rather than fossil fuels, what impact would that have on public health?
Senator Warren, one of the major benefits of transitioning to electric vehicles is the simple fact that they have zero tailpipe emissions. So every day we have cars, trucks, buses driving up and down our streets, driving through our neighborhoods, taking our kids back and forth to school, and they're emitting pollutants every time they drive on our roads. And I think one important point, which a recent assessment showed, and I can happy to submit this for the committee, is that as a result of transitioning that entire fleet, if we were to take our entire bus fleet, our entire railroad fleet, and transition it to electric drive motors, we would see 4,200 fewer deaths annually, many of which are from children and elderly who are especially susceptible to ambient air pollution.
Wow, so 4,200 deaths, and presumably a lot of people who just wouldn't get as sick, right?
Correct.
But don't die from this. Thank you. You know, this is the reason that
a new round of stimulus could be on the way for many Americans, everybody. Now, this new bill could guarantee low-income households with monthly stimulus payments. As long as they qualify, eligible people could receive up to $1,200 in extra relief. Now, this is awesome news. And according to the Washington Post, Democratic and Republican lawmakers have held early discussions about a new round of crisis relief stimulus spending. A bill for a guaranteed income program proposed by progressive Democrats in Congress is calling for ongoing $1,200 monthly stimulus checks for adults, plus $600 for each child in the household. The program, called the Support Act, which was introduced in the U.S. by Minnesota Democratic Representatives Elon Omar and co-sponsored by Representatives Pramila Jayapal and Cori Bush. Omar said in a news release about this bill, "For too long we have prioritized endless growth while millions of people are homeless, hungry, or without health care. The crisis has laid bare these inequalities, and we have the ability to make sure everyone has their needs met." The legislation would set up a $2.5 billion grant fund that would pay for the pilot program. It would pay $1,200 monthly for adults and $600 monthly for each child in the home. Different communities would be involved in the pilot program for the first 5 years, and then the program would become available to everybody who qualifies. According to the proposed legislation, single filing adults with AGI's income of up to $75,000 and jointly filing adults with incomes of up to $150,000, and those filing as head of household with an income of up to $112,000 would be eligible for the maximum amount monthly. Now, a family of 4 or 2 children being younger than age 18 and a yearly income under $150,000 would be eligible for $3,600 a month. Now, the U.S. job market remained tight last month as employers struggled to find people to hire. The Labor Department said that the United States businesses added 390,000 jobs in May as the unemployment rate held steady at 3.6%. Job gains for March and April were revised, down by a total of 22,000 jobs. The demand for labor has also left employers hoping that older workers who left the workforce early in the crisis will come out of retirement, especially after the recent drop in the stock market put a dent in the 401ks. The number of workers ages 55 and older grew last month by 181,000. The labor force also grew by 330,000 workers last month, not keeping up the pace with hiring. In order to attract scarce workers, employers have been offering more flexible schedules, hourly benefits, and higher wages. Average hourly wages in May were 5.2% higher than a year ago, a slight moderation from the month before. But even those bigger paychecks are not keeping pace with rising prices. The Fed is concerned that rising wages could fuel stubbornly high inflation. At 8.3% in May, inflation is already near a 4-decade high, and the central bank has begun raising interest rates aggressively in an effort to regain control over prices. The Fed has raised the rates by half percentage point in early May, and 2 more similar-sized rate hikes are expected in June and July. The former Treasury Secretary is skeptical the Fed can curb inflation without causing a recession and the higher unemployment that comes with it. He said during an interview this week, "I don't think that there's a durable reduction in inflation without a meaningful reduction in wage growth."
Let me start just by making certain that I tell you something that I think I need to say on behalf of Kansans. I've never seen the level of anxiety, uncertainty, concern for the future as I see today when I have conversations with folks in my neighborhood and across Kansas.